In this video, we're going to look at using custom calculations inside of Formstack Forms. Now, as you know, we generally focus on low-code workflows, but this is one of those situations where we're actually going to introduce some code so that we can really do whatever we want. We try to make it easy. We've got some snippets on our website, so be sure to go over and grab those. But otherwise, we're going to spice things up a bit, and we are going to add some code into our low-code workflow. Conceptually, from a 30,000 foot view, what's generally happening with a form online is that you create a form that's got a bunch of fields, and then when a user hits submit, all of that information in those form fields gets packaged up and then sent on its way. That could be to an email, that could be to another app, that could just be stored in a database that's in the app where you created the form. But basically, that's the idea of what's happening. Now, depending on the form tool that you're using, you might be able to do some simple arithmetic on some of these fields to maybe calculate a price or do some other kind of a simple calculations. Otherwise, if you're trying to do anything more complex, you generally need to send this data to another tool that will then take that, and it could be Zapier, it could be Google Sheets, maybe Airtable, but you're generally sending it somewhere else to get processed, and then you're sending it on its way again. So what we're going to do here is we're going to set this up so that we are listening for that submit. We're listening for that submit action. And then what we're going to do is when someone hits submit, we're just going to say, wait, pause, hold on, hold the phone. And then we're going to do some stuff. So someone's going to hit submit. We're going to, whoa, hold on, hold the phone. We're going to do some stuff. We're going to make some calculations. And then if you saw me drag this kind of really light field over, that's because once we've made the calculation, we probably want to inject that thing that we just calculated. If we're calculating a price, we probably want to pass the price through. So we're going to say, wait, hold on, calculate this thing, put that information in a hidden form field. Once we've done that, okay, great. Now we can send our data through. So we're basically just listening for that submit. When that happens, hold the phone, do what we want you to do, insert that data into the form. And now once that's done, now you can send everything on. So that's like from a 30,000 foot view, what we're doing. Now let's dig deeper. So the way that we need to set up our form is actually a little bit more complex than what we have here. So we've got our standard form fields, right? But then we have to have our hidden form field where we're going to put our price. But then we have to include an additional form field that's going to be the code. So we're going to, in Formstack, we're going to insert what they would call a code block, a code element. And then you'll see, based on the types of fields that we have, we're actually going to include a couple more hidden fields just to make our life a little bit easier. So we end up in this situation where we've got a bunch of hidden fields that the user won't see, but we're going to use in our code. Now, the exact order of these doesn't actually matter. You could sprinkle them throughout. It doesn't matter. What's going to happen is we're going to have what's called an event listener. We're going to listen for that submit, and then we are going to kind of intercept that process. So we've got our normal form. We've got an additional field for the resulting calculation. We've got our code embed field. And then if you have any checkboxes, drop downs, radio buttons, anything that's not just a form, like an input, a text input, anything that's not a text input, we're also going to create a hidden field for those. And the reason for that is it's just a little bit easier to grab that information. Because what we need to do is when we hijack that process, when we intercept the submit, this code is going to say, okay, go and get all of the values for all of this, all of these fields. Go and get all of the values for all these fields. Now we're going to run some stuff. We're going to perform our calculation, whatever that is, and then we're going to put that back into our form field. So the reason that we have these hidden fields associated with dropdowns and checkboxes and radio buttons is just it's a little easier to grab the data out of those fields instead of trying to grab the data out of a form field or out of a checkbox or a dropdown. So that is that's maybe the 25,000 foot view. But now let's actually go a little bit deeper. So the example that we have is that a company, you are putting on an event and you've told people that if you're going to get free swag if you sign up, if you register more than 5 people, if you get a VIP ticket, or if you have attended in the past. So only one of those things needs to be true. And if one of those things is true, then you will get free swag. Okay. So how many tickets would you like? This is just they put in a number and they tell us how many people are going to register. Then we have a ticket type. I've created a ticket type that's VIP, main floor, general admission. So if that is VIP, then you get free swag. Have you attended before? If they've attended before, yes, then you get free swag. Otherwise, no, you don't. And then you can also see that we've got a couple hidden fields here. So we've got this ticket hidden. So the value of we're going to kind of behind the scenes, instead of grabbing the information out of the dropdown, we've created this hidden input, and this will make sense a little bit more soon. And then we've also got a hidden input for this. Have you attended before? Notice we don't have a hidden input for our how many tickets, and that's because we have the input field already. So it's easy to grab that out. The thing to note here is that when you're setting these up, if you have a drop down or if you have a radio button or a checkbox, what you can do is you can come in and you can say Advanced Options Editor. And this is key because now what we're saying is VIP equals 1, main floor equals 2, general admission equals 3. And the way that we did that was we ticked this box over here on the right that says use separate values. So if we uncheck that, you can see those go away. If we tick it again, then we can see that we can add our values for the different drop downs. That's key, because then what we end up doing is we say, see this hidden one where you talk about the tickets? What I want you to do is, we've got our input type here, and what we're saying is the default value is actually going to be a calculation. We tick this calculation box and we choose the field. I'll get rid of this for you here. We're just going to say that ticket hidden is always going to be ticket type. And so what we're saying is, by default, the default value of this is always the value of whatever they select. And since we set the values up here, this field will equal 1, 2, or 3, depending on what they check. Same thing down here. Have you attended before? Yes, no. What I did was I Advanced Options Editor, use separate values, 1 and 0. And then what I'm saying is I'm mapping this attended hidden field. I'm saying this is a calculation, and I put in the field, have you attended before? So now this will be 1 or 0. I also have the swag hidden, which is going to remain blank. And then we've got our embed code. So our embed code is the information that you can start with the snippet. And I've actually modified ours a little bit just to kind of speed things up here. But basically what we're doing is we've got global variables. So if you have any global variables that you're trying to bring in, where you say maybe there's a ticket price, or you want to say 5. So we're going to say 5 is the number of attendees that they need to, we'll call this num attendees. I'm setting these global variables right away at the beginning because I might want to use them later. I'll actually get rid of this one now. And just in JavaScript, you can separate variables with commas, but you need to finish the last one with a semicolon. So now I've got my global variables. Now I've separated out my form IDs. And basically what we're saying is when we said that we had to go and like grab the individual values from each field, what we're doing is we're going to just save those field IDs. So it's actually, we've got a form ID, which is saying the whole form. What's the ID of that? Then we've got our field IDs. And Formstack automatically gives us field IDs that will never change unless you add a new or you change something if you were delete and then re-add. But basically, these don't change. And so that's really nice. So now what we can do is we're actually saving all of these IDs as variables in our JavaScript. And I've renamed these so that they're more understandable to me. So we've got the number attending ID, how many people are attending, the ticket type ID, and this is actually the hidden field. This is the hidden field because I want to know the value. So this is my ticket type ID. I've got my attended before, I have the attended before. This is again the hidden field. And then I've got my should they get swag ID. These last three are hidden fields. And I'll show you in a second how to grab those IDs. Then we've got our custom function, which basically is saying this is where we do everything. The first thing I like to do inside of this function is now I want to go and actually get the values, right? So I'm just labeling a container for should we get swag, because I'm going to use that later. But then I've got a variable that is number attended value. And what I'm saying is go into that document, get the element that has the ID number attending ID. So it maps up here. And then give me the value and put that into number attending value. Ticket type value, document get element by ID. We've got our ticket type ID. This is the hidden ID. So it basically, when it runs this, once this function runs, it goes and gets this. It's going to get that element by the ID of the ticket type ID, and it's going to grab the value. So now what I'm doing is I've captured the IDs for all these fields, and now what I'm doing is I'm saving all the values. This is a little long-winded way of getting to the values, but I find that it's actually really nice to have all of my variables kind of named up here, all the things that might change on the form. And then once I'm in here, now I can just start using variables. I don't have to be inserting a bunch of random Formstack IDs in amongst my function. So then I just have a little sample here where I said, should I get swag? I'm going to set that equal to yes. I've got my console log, which basically when I run this, I'm going to be able to see in my log the value of should I get swag. And then at the end, what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, this document, get the swag element, get that swag element. And I want the value of that. So whatever we put in there is going to be the value of should get swag. And so basically this is where we're injecting that value back into the form. Then the real magic happens here where we're saying, now if you can see here, this is my function, is everything inside these brackets. So now my function is closed off here. We're going to add an event listener. We're going to say, hey, on this form, which has an ID up here, on this form, we want to listen for submit. And if submit on this form gets called, or if someone tries to submit, then do whatever's inside there. And then what's inside there is custom function. And so whenever submit is hit, hijack it, we're going to run custom function, which then sends us back up here. And now we do all this stuff, right? So that is kind of, this is probably more of the 5,000 foot view of what we're kind of doing is we're establishing all the variables for all of our inputs. And then what we're doing is we're grabbing all of those values for each one of the inputs. We're going to, in here is where we're going to add our logic. And then we're going to print it out. We're going to, should get swag ID. We're going to inject our response in there. And then that closes off our function. And then on the document submit, what we're going to end up doing is we are going to listen for submit and then run that function. So that's like the 5,000 foot view. So how do we find these field IDs? We've got a couple ways. The first thing we can do is we can view the live form. And here's my live form. These obviously will be hidden in the end, but for demonstrative purposes, we've got them shown. But you can right click, inspect, and what's going to happen is you will see this input, and I've got my ID. This is the field ID right there. I can then click down on attended hidden. I can click that, and I can say input field ID is that. I'm just copying and pasting those in. If you have a bunch of those, that gets a little tedious, going one by one and grabbing the input. So there is another way to do it. The one thing that I would also notice is that when you right click and you hit inspect, the way to get your form ID is you come up to the form at the very top, and you'll see that there is a ID, FS form 434. See, that is, and this is the only place you can really grab that, as I'm aware, or that I'm aware of. So you're going to want to grab that one, and you're going to want to grab the ones for the other fields. The other thing to note is that if you inspect, right click inspect, and then you go console, if you remember that console log, when I hit submit, what'll happen is, and I put a break in there, but I can see in my console should get swag is yes, because I printed that out. So if you look at the top here, this is the console, should get swag is yes. So that is one way to grab your IDs. The other way to grab your IDs is if you go to settings and then you go emails and actions, you can edit the notification email, and you can say, I want to do a custom message, import default message, use plain text editor. And now you can see how many tickets would you like is that number. Ticket hidden. Here's the number of that ID. All of these start with field in front of them. And so then you can bring those back. So this is another way to get those numbers of your fields. So what we've done, oh, I went too far. What we've done is we've come in here. We have added all of those field IDs to correspond with the variable. So we're just storing those. And then we're saying the number attending ID, and we're putting that right down. So the number attending value is the number attending ID associates with the number attending value. Ticket type ID associates with ticket type value. Attended before ID, attended before value. So these are all custom. You can name these variables whatever you want. Name them something that makes sense to you so that it all makes sense. Then what you can do now is you can say, effectively, you can start writing your function. So I've got some logic built out where I can say, if number attending value is greater than, remember num attendees, because these are global variables that are outside the function, I can call them whenever I want. So if the number attending value is greater than my num attendees threshold right there, then what I want to do is I want to have should get swag equals yes. Okay. Now, if that's not true, then we're going to skip through to the next one. And the next one is if my ticket type value, if you remember, if my ticket type was VIP, then that would equal 1. So ticket type value, if it equals 1, now you put the two equal signs to say it's got to equal this. So if that's true, then you should get swag is yes. And lastly, else if attended before equals 1, then should get swag is yes. Otherwise, none of these things will be true, and should get swag. We can actually probably put this here. We can say equals no. So should get swag is always going to equal no, unless as we're coming through, if the number attending is greater than 5, then yes. Otherwise, if ticket value is VIP, then yes. Attended before is yes, then swag is yes. So now what I'm basically doing is I'm stepping through, I'm adding this logic, and then I'm going to print out and determine whether or not I should get swag. So here we go. Let's 6 people, main floor, and I've not attended before. So I'm going to submit this form. Let me first, actually, you'll be able to see. So my form was submitted. Now if I come through to my responses, I should be able to see that I said 6. I said 6. My ticket type was not VIP. I have not attended before, but swag hidden was yes. So now what I've done is the thing that I've calculated, because I injected it back into the form, it then gets passed through with whatever data. So I've injected it back. I've used my code to inject the value back into the form. It did its thing. And now it's getting passed through with the data. If that's going to Google Sheets or Airtable or Formstack documents somewhere else, now I actually have that, and I'm sending it through. So that is kind of the 500-foot view, maybe even lower. So hopefully that made sense. Hopefully that helps. Go and grab that. Go and grab that code. You should make sure that you set your forms up correctly with the values, and then mapping these values to hidden fields. In the end, you'd need to come through in here and actually make sure that these are hidden. So tick these to hidden, and then the embed code would also, I suppose, naturally be hidden. The only thing that's not included in that code snippet is you will need to add the script tag at this top and bottom. So open it up so that it knows that this is JavaScript, and then close it out so that it knows you're done with your JavaScript. Otherwise, best of luck. I hope that this helps you out and you're able to do some really cool things. You can really do whatever JavaScript function you want. So the sky is the limit. All righty.